Hello, everyone. Welcome to the All Things Good podcast. I'm your coach and your host, Giovanna Sorillo. Thank you so much for tuning in to the podcast that helps you with your mental health, self-development, and your overall wellness, helping you become the greatest version of yourself. I want to give a shout out to my listeners for constantly supporting the podcast. They are tuning in from all over the world. And I want to know, how are you? What's going on in your life? Was there a particular guest that you would like to come on and dive more into the topics that they were discussing? Let me know. Send an email to allthingsgoodcoaching@gmail.com. I want to hear from you. If you are not following the Bereavement nonprofit organization located in Passaic, New Jersey, then what exactly are you doing? This is a nonprofit organization centered on helping men and young boys grieve. Their programs are consisting of so many activities such as painting, cooking, gardening, yoga. There's so many things that they're implementing to help these men grieve and process their emotions. And this is amazing because, at what point were you seeing men actually caring about their emotions, their mental health? The world is changing. The world is evolving. We're growing as a human species, and this is amazing. So, if you know any men or anyone who, if you are a male and you're interested in becoming a part of this organization or just looking to process some emotions, reach out to Bereavement. That you can find them on Facebook and on Instagram. And trust me, it's not something that you're going to regret. You're going to love it. So, today we're going to be discussing the topic of being stuck and the power of choice. Our lovely guest, True, will be discussing how to become unstuck. Who is True? Well, he is a writer, an author, a speaker, and a certified life coach with a mission to fight for social justice and share the power of personal development. He co-founded an organization called Extended Black Family Movement, wrote for Inspire magazine, and co-founded a youth program called Liberation School. True has made a lasting impact through his inspiring speeches at various institutions, including Essex County Youth Correctional Facility, Pride Academy in East Orange, New Jersey, Hunter's World Mentorship Program, and many more. Help me by welcoming True. Welcome, True. How are you today?
I'm doing excellent, and I'm grateful to be here with you.
Awesome. I'm excited to hear more about your story and just see how you can help our listeners get out of being stuck. So,
no doubt.
Take us back to the version of you that was hanging in the streets. What do you believe he was searching for?
Wow, that's a deep question. I appreciate that question. We first got to say that I wasn't hanging in the street. I was very active in the streets. I mean, you're talking to a young man who was stealing cars, selling drugs, who was polluting his body with, alcohol on a regular basis, like on a whole other level at a very young age before my brain was even fully developed, smoking weed, and also just consuming negative energy from all directions. And I say that with all respect with the community I come from, because even though the community I come from has its challenges, there's beautiful, amazing people. We've had good times, and I just want to acknowledge that as well, especially because people who are not from the community or not from places where I come from, they already have a negative stigma and prejudice against the people that come from there. And I understand why, especially if you're not from there. But that young man, he was lost in a sense, but he wasn't lost because of his lack of awareness. He was lost because he didn't have another way. He didn't have any direction towards another possible path. And what I was searching for, and not really even aware that I was actually searching, but in hindsight, right, reflecting back, I was searching for economic stability. I was searching for a masculine example and definition, figuring that out. I was searching for self-discovery and where do I fit in the grand scheme of this huge universe that we're in. again, I wasn't conscious of these things. I wasn't like, oh, I want to look for a man figure, right? No, that
Mhm.
wasn't happening. But again, reflecting back, that's what I was doing.
Wow. I love that because we all have, well, not all, but I have a similar story and background where I didn't grow up with a father and looking
Mm,
for that in a male figure, I'm sure you know how the story goes, but not being
yeah,
able to find that going in the wrong places, in the wrong direction, to only figure out that what we have is truly within us. The thing that we are
yeah,
desiring is really within us.
indeed. And I think it's deep that because here you go, right? You and I don't know each other, and you're a woman, and you went through a similar path. And it shows and prove how subconsciously and just by nature, we are all meant to have the full element of things. Like you can't escape it. Not to
Mhm.
say that you won't succeed or you won't progress, but somehow, some way, we're going to find a way to fill that void.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, when did you notice that things began to shift in your life? Was there a major event that took place, or was there just a major mind shift?
Yeah, I get that question often because of my transformation is so extreme. And so I would say that there's a multitude of things, right? We already know life isn't linear, right? It's an unfolding process where everything that happens matters. But if I can point to some things that have made a significant difference in my transformation, I would say, reading the autobiography of Malcolm X at the age of 12, right? That opened my mind up. I would also include the birth of my daughter. When I had my daughter when I was 19, and it was a huge eye opener for me because I had maturity. Even though in some ways I was immature, but I had the maturity and natural fatherly instinct to know that I had to make a shift because I didn't want my daughter to not only experience, like, I didn't want her to experience some of the things that I went through, but also just observing my environment and seeing
Mhm.
some of the women and some of the girls and what they experienced. And I didn't want my daughter to experience those things. So I always say that although at the time I didn't really have love for myself, my love for her, my desire for her to be the best that she can be turned on a light in me that in order for her to have that, I had to do something as her father. I would say another pivotal moment is, the multiple times that I was arrested. I was blessed to not have to do no real prison time, but I
Mhm.
have been arrested. And I don't know, bro. I got friends and even family that have been in and out of jail multiple times, but that ain't for me. Like, I learned that quick. A huge, huge pivotal moment is joining the nation. So I was a member of the Nation of Gods and Earths, which is very similar to the Nation of Islam, for those who may not be familiar with the Nation of Gods and Earths, because they provided me with what we call knowledge of self,
Okay.
which in essence was a set of tools and lessons about our history. And in addition to that, a set of tools of how to think and how to make sense of the world and how my people, our people, and what we contributed to the world from a historical sense. And so that was huge for me because at the time I just identified as a street person. Well, some people may call it a thug, a gangster, whatever you want to call it. Like, for me, that's all my life was about. But when I was introduced to knowledge of self, and I realized, like, wow, there's so much more that I can be and do. So I would say that those are really the pivotal things. There's so much more. I've been blessed with a very full life, especially at a young age. I got off the porch very early. And so, but I would say that those are probably pivotal things for me.
Awesome. So, how did you come across this organization? What is it called again?
The nation of gods and earths.
Okay, so how did you come across them? Was it just like an encounter with a particular person? You did some research?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I was living in Cal. So because I was as I said, I hit the streets at a very young age. My mother sent me to California. And so, and that the reason why I have to pick up that, I have to state that details because then eventually I was wilding in California and got sent back. And so when I was sent back, I went to East Side, and I was by divine fate, I was sat next to a good brother. His name is Dasu. Shout out to Dasu, good brother of mine. He was a member of the Nation of Gods and Earths, and in the homeroom they sat us together. And so, and he was breaking down this knowledge about, the distance between the sun and the earth. And I'm like, yo, how is it that we in the same grade and you have all of this knowledge? You have all of this extra information that I don't have. And so he told me, well, yo, I got introduced, I'm a member of the Nation of Gods and Earths, and that's where I got it from. And then I met more people, and then they took me to an event that would happen on a regular basis called the Day of the Babies that happens every September and at Montgomery Park in Patterson. And so that's where I met what we call our enlightener, which is basically your teacher, your educator, the person who sort of puts you under their wing and teaches you the lessons and makes sure that you understand it. And if you have any questions, you can
Mhm.
refer to them. So that's basically how I was introduced to it. And remember, this is the 90s. So at the time, being dumb wasn't cool. Like
Mhm.
now, being dumb is cool. But back then, we had names like, you know, Supreme or
Right.
King T, right? Like it's these strong, powerful names that reflected, royalty and strength. And so that's what it was about. And even like back then, there was more conscious hip hop, conscious music.
Right.
So it was a thing. It was a part of the environment it was actually cool. It was like a fad. And so not to say that that's why I joined, but I think that helped, that it was popular. And
Right.
so, to answer your question, that's how I was introduced to the nation, and then eventually through knowledge itself. And remember, I read the autobiography of Malcolm X at the age of 12. I joined the
Okay.
nation at the age of 15, 16. So I feel like the autobiography of Malcolm X, who's my hero, I named my son after Malcolm X, it sort of not sort of, excuse me, planted the seed and made it even possible for me to get introduced to all this amazing Black consciousness.
That's awesome. Wow, that story is amazing. And I love how God aligned for you to meet this particular person. You already had some type of wisdom and insight or information that was guiding you towards this path that you're on now. And you just connected
Yeah,
with someone that can begin to ignite that for you. And that's beautiful. I love that.
yeah, indeed. Thank you, thank you. Yeah, it was deep because I'm Dominican, so my I was born here, but my family's from Dominican Republic, so. And a lot of Dominicans are not in touch, especially back then. It's easier now, are not in touch with their African roots and their Black heritage.
Mhm.
So there was a lot of deprogramming that I had to do, even just based culturally, a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, I always knew because my family's what was called Afro Latino. So, but it's weird, so everybody's Black, but they're saying they're not Black. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? So, but yeah, but it was an amazing experience that definitely contributed in a major way to the man that I am today. So shout out to the Nation of Gods and Earths.
Awesome. Awesome. So you say we always have a choice. How does
Hmm.
someone begin to reclaim their power when they feel that they have none?
That's great. T, I love that question. I would say everything is within, right? And I'm telling you this, not to sound corny or this is not positive fluff or none of that, although I'm all about positive energy for sure. But what I want people to know that you have a mind. And your mind is a tool, like for real. And part of that tool is our perceptions, how we perceive things. And so you can reclaim your power by simply shifting your perceptions on whatever it is that you're experiencing. And so when I say reclaim your power, listen, I know, especially like even us as a people and some of the things that we've experienced, I always tell people we got to get out of the victimhood. And when I say that, I'm not saying that you're not a victim. I'm not saying that you have not been victimized. But if we take on the context that I'm a warrior, if we take on the context, but all of that is here. That's all
Right.
about how you perceive things. So when I say you're not stuck and that you have a choice, the choice that I'm talking about is your mind and how you perceive things, your context, making things. So, and this is a lot of this can be made up. Like you
Right.
make it up, right? You can make this event, whatever it is you've been through. And I know that's tough. I know that's tough, and I don't want to sound insensitive to the stuff that people have been through, but you, with your mind and your internal powers, because we never lose our power, we just don't use it for
Right.
whatever reason in that moment. A lot of people talk about, oh, true, I don't have discipline, no, I don't have the willpower for this. No, you do. It doesn't go away. You're just not activating it in this moment or in this or for this particular thing. So that's where we have the choice. We have internal abilities that we can tap into. And so, but we have to make the choice, the conscious choice. And it's not always easy, even for me. Trust me. Life is challenging, and I go
Right.
through things. I also have a job, and at my job, I'm the director. So there's a lot going on, and so I have to remind myself, like, wait a minute, this external factor is not stronger than me. I cannot
Right.
allow this external factor or whatever's happening outside control or influence what's inside, because that's my domain. That's where
Right.
I have a choice. That's where my power is. So that's where
Yes.
you have your choice inside of you.
I love that. I love that. How
Thank you.
important would you say self-awareness is? Because for me in particular, I was the victim. I was the one, why me? Why this? Why? And
Mm.
so I began to
Mm-hmm.
realize, hold on, there's
Mm-hmm.
something within me that has the power to change everything around. And so when I began
Yeah.
to become self-aware of the mind, the internal dialogue of what was speaking in those
Mm.
particular moments when I was placed in situations. So can you explain to our listeners what that internal dialogue may sound like and how to practice self-awareness when it comes to these internal conversations that is telling us, no, we can't do it. No, we have to stay stuck.
Yeah, yeah, that's deep. A fish doesn't know it's in water, right? Because it's just in water. That's all it knows. So the self-awareness, and remember, I said one of the most pivotal things in my life was knowledge of self, which is a form of self-awareness, right? There's knowledge of self, of your
Mm,
historical relevance, right? But then there's also knowledge of you, which I dare say, no disrespect to history, is probably the most important. So I think that first we have to be exposed to something else. When my children were young, I would take them to the suburbs so they could see big houses and introduce them to certain people from different financial brackets. And I know that this sounds like material stuff, but there's a
mm,
reason why I was doing it. I wanted them to know that there's more out there, that
right,
even above what your dad, who you look up to when they were younger, because when the children are young, they look at their dad as a superhero. So I
right,
wanted I wanted them to see, I wanted their mind to expand. So to answer your question, we first have to be introduced to another way, to know another way exists, because a lot of times we just don't know. We just
right,
don't know. And especially when our environment is feeding us something, because that's what our environments does, right? Our parent, when I say environment, I don't just mean where you live, but I mean your family, your parents, your friends, what you're consuming as far as music, TV, what media, whatever that is. It's feeding you something. It's feeding, and we
right,
become a byproduct of what we eat mentally and physically. So we have to be exposed to this. That's why I love podcasts like this, your platform, because what you're doing, you're exposing people to other perspectives, different
right.
ways of thinking. So I've read over 400 books on psychology, personal development, spirituality, and culture. And one of my favorite types of books are autobiographies and biographies. Why? Because you see in real time what people have done in
Mm,
real life, experiencing real things. So you have these complex, what could be complex, not really that complex, concepts and thoughts. And then you see how people can apply them in
right,
real life, right? Going through real things. So to answer your question, I think first of all, you got to go outside of your realm. You got to start, if for example, if you want to be fit, and I'm only using that because that's something that most of us could relate to, well, start having conversations with people that are fit. Start reading books, or consuming that type of information so that you can see this other world and be exposed to how other people think and how they eat and stuff like that. So I think success is universal. It just applies in different ways. So I think the first thing to do is to be exposed to different ways of thinking and different ways of being.
That makes sense. And you kind of answered my next question, which was how important is environment? And I mean,
Ooh.
just for me in particular, with my background, I literally had to leave my environment to begin to change my mindset. And like you said, expose myself to different things, different possibilities. And so I love that you mentioned that, because I think our listeners need to know that sometimes it's okay to put self first and just escape your current reality to create a new one, because there's a
Yeah.
possibility for it.
Yeah, and yo, I mean, same with me too, right? I love where I'm from. I'm from 10th Ave and 23rd in Patterson. And when I was out, I was a low level alcoholic. And the reason why I say that because there's, it's just like there's a spectrum of, addicts. And so at the time I was an alcoholic, I was selling drugs, and I was involved in a lot of activity that was not conducive to this new transformed path that I was creating for myself. So when I graduated from college, one of the first things that I had to do for my own well-being, unfortunately, is move. And the reason why I did that, back to your other point, self-awareness, I knew myself.
Mm.
Um, it would be too easy because you gotta realize I felt so blessed that I just got a degree. You talking about somebody who barely made it out of high school. Then I graduated top honors with this degree, and it's a degree in applied science where there was a possibility I wasn't even going to be licensed because I was a felon. And
Wow.
so I got blessed with this opportunity, right? And so I didn't want to mess it up. And so I knew that if I stayed in the hood, I would revert back to my old ways, because I was the man on my block. Like I ran things. So it ain't nothing for me to just, you know what? I'm just gonna work off my phone. You know what I mean? I'm just gonna
Mhm.
sell drugs off my phone, just more low key. But this is the thing. I've always had a studious mind. And so just from reading others' experience and listening other to OGs and old school gangsters that been through it, I learned that a lot of times when somebody is attempting to leave the game or about to leave the game, they always have this one last flip, a couple more thousands before I leave, and something would always happen. Maybe
Mhm.
not always, but it like that. It seems like that's what happened to a lot of people, I should say. And so,
Right.
learning from other people's experience, they say a smart person learns from their own mistakes. A wise person learns from the mistakes of others. So I said, you know what? I was blessed with my degree. I got a whole nother career. This is an opportunity, and so left the environment. And so and I brought up the alcoholism because it was the same thing. When I got more into health and fitness, I knew that if I hung around the same people, and I love my people, by the way, this is not about them. This is about
Right.
me. If I hung around the same people and the same, because if my block is right here, the liquor store is like a few steps around the corner, right? So if I hung around in the same place, then it'll just be more like it'll be likely that I'll just revert back to my old ways. So I left. And so, but now, right now I go to the hood. Now I do drink socially, and I don't recommend that for anybody who may be struggling with alcohol because I'm
Right.
able to do that, but they may have to just stay super clean. But now I develop the strength and the wings to be like, okay, I can go back in the hood, be with my buddies, and not necessarily revert back to my old ways. But it took for me to leave the environment and develop that strength first. The
Right.
other thing I want to talk about the environment is the most important environment is here.
Mhm.
This is its own universe within itself, and you have to cultivate, nurture, and develop that. If that is solid. See, I my flesh is weak, which is why I
Right.
had to physically leave. But the truth is, if this environment was solid and strong, then I could be anywhere and not revert or not do anything I don't want to do. But
Right.
I just didn't want to go against the I guess you could say the easier way, which so I took remove myself physically, developed this, and now I'm good. So and that
Right.
came through self-awareness.
Right. And I think either way is okay for someone to do, whether you place, like you said, cultivate your mind and begin to
Hmm.
reprogram it while staying in the environment. If you have the strength to do that, then do that. But if
Hmm.
you feel like it's going to take a little longer, it's going to be a little harder, a little bit more difficult, then just remove yourself, strengthen your mind, like you said, cultivate it. Because I see it as a
Hmm.
soil. Like you begin to plant good things,
Right,
positive
right.
thinking. And it's not toxic positivity, but just gratitude, all these things that help you ground into the person that you're trying to become. So I love that you
Indeed.
mentioned that, because there are two ways you can go about this. There's no one way. There's multiple paths that we can take. And I think that is the beginning of the mindset shift, to know that there are many ways and many paths that we can begin to transform.
And see, and I'm glad you said that, not to cut you apart itself, but that's again, right, the self-forward, the exposure piece. We have to be exposed to these tools and to even know some people don't know there's multiple ways.
Right.
It may sound like common sense to you and I, but some people really just they're just not aware.
No, right, right. And so I love that. So everyone defines success differently. What are
Yeah.
some ways your listeners can begin to set goals to achieve their level of success? Can you provide some goal setting tips?
Oh man. Well, first, right, I always go back to this again, right? This up here. Before we even talk about any goals, we got to talk about who are you being. So in my book, The Power of Choice, I talk about how whenever you decide, right, or you choose to manifest something, a gap appears, right? What's in that gap? What's missing in that gap? And that is the magic question, because within that gap exists who you need to be. So, right, and our goals vary from small goals to big goals, but I think it's most importantly to really recognize who are you being, right? Be means to exist. All right, that's what be means, to exist. Ing means to existing. So in this moment right now, who are you? Who are you being? Because who you are now is what got you the results that you have now. So the first thing that we have to do is first to say, okay, who am I being? And then evaluate and really be honest about who or what am I doing? Because
Mm.
who I'm being and what I'm doing is what's giving me what I have. That's the
Right.
first thing. The other thing that I would say, and because to me, everything is all about these things. Before we even get into like a physical manifestation of something, all of these things have to exist first. The other thing is, what is the significance of me or meaning of this goal? What does it mean to me? Because whenever you have a goal depending on what the goal is, of course, right? It's gonna come with some challenges. It's gonna come with a some type of level of sacrifice and commitment. And what you make it mean, or whatever significance it has for you, is going to create the space for you to be like, nah, you know what? I'm gonna wake up in the morning on a Saturday when I could be sleeping and have this podcast, have this conversation for my listener. Something has to drive you, something has to inspire you to get through the hardships. So I would deal with all of that first. Who do I need to be? Right? What do I need to do? And then comes in NLP, which is neuro linguistic programming. We have a set ways of accomplishing goals, right? So the first one is making sure that it's measurable. Well, I would say be specific, right? So, but being specific, making sure that it's measurable, making sure that it's achievable, while at the same time stretching you, right? It's making
Mm.
sure that it stretches you. You have to be able to measure it, to track the progress, because how do you know if you're even getting closer or away if you're not tracking it? The other thing that I would say is reverse engineer. So looking at, okay, if I have these things, the person that I am being has these things, what, not only the type of person I need to be, but what would I be have done to get there? And then breaking it down into smaller steps. I think sometimes we, the term about how do you eat an elephant, one bite at a time. I think that as simplistic as that sound, I think it's profound, because again, whenever we want to accomplish anything of significance, of a big magnitude, we really have to break it down into smaller sizes. And then you're going to need structure. You're going to
Mm.
need structure and discipline, and that's going to take sacrifice. It's going to take an investment of time. And so I would say that if you want to accomplish any goals on any level, on any magnitude, I think that the strong foundation.
Those are really
But
helpful
everything
tips.
starts within. Yeah, thank you,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah, definitely. And I'm glad that you started there because that is the like that's the starter point. You have to
Yeah,
start with the mindset. But I
yeah.
also
Oh,
wanted to make this
I'm
point
sorry.
to our listeners. No, you're fine. That
Two things I want to add
sure.
before you get there. I'm sorry. Um, One thing that definitely helps me is accountability. So like
Mhm.
I hold myself accountable, and I've just, I'm not trying to flex or brag or anything like that, but I've just always been that type of person. Like I don't really need people on me to do something, but it
Mhm.
helps. And I have amazing people in my life that hold me accountable. And I get inspired by that, by
Mhm.
just knowing that. So I believe that if anyone is struggling with discipline or anything to that magnitude or that level, I would say, to create an accountability group or partner, or enroll, not convince, enroll the people in your life into what you're striving to accomplish. And the other thing I wanted to say, forgive me, I cut you off earlier,
It's
is
okay.
the time. Definitely, there has to be some sense of time, but just be flexible. But you got to have like a time. And I thought about that as you were talking, because I thought about the this big mountain that I accomplished, which is writing a book. And having a time, now mind you, I had to push back that time like 3 or 4 times, but
Mhm.
having that time definitely motivated me during the times when I didn't feel like doing it, or I felt like doing something else. It's like having that, what I call a live line. Most people call a deadline.
Right, right. And what that was actually what I was going to say was the timing of it all.
Oh, my bad.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Because everyone has this expectation like it has to happen within a year or it has to happen by this amount of time. And that's awesome to have that goal and have that mindset. But like he stated, be flexible. Things might not happen during the time that you expected, but as long as don't let that discourage you from the final goal, from the final product, because eventually, as you continue to become this person that you are longing to achieve, those results will come, but it comes
Yeah.
within time. And a lot of times I see that many people want to rush the process. But you're
Mhm.
talking about breaking down old paradigms of your mind. You're talking about reprogramming old mindsets from victimhood to the overcomer, to the victor. And so that requires time. That alone requires time, but that doesn't mean that you're not making progress. That's actually the best progress that you're going to have by reprogramming and deconstructing these old belief systems. So I wanted to
Indeed.
just mention that.
And Queen, if you don't get to, or when you get to the finish line, and maybe you're not done with the whole book, but
Mhm.
maybe you got some of the book done, or you got majority of the book done, or maybe your goal was to get to 10% body fat and you started at 18, and by the summer you wanted to be at 10%. Okay, well, you started at 18 and now you're at 16. So I think there's also that, right? So I think we should be hard on ourselves. I believe that especially men should be harder. Like, yo, yes, push, do your best. But then when you get there, don't be too hard on yourself, and now you're like, oh, I didn't do it, I'm a
Right.
failure. And I'm like, all right, cool, all right, I got this close, I'm closer. And so
Right.
there's that dance between being hard on
Right.
yourself, but then also one of my favorite principles of Buddhism, having compassion at the same time and respecting the process.
Right.
Yeah, so I
Right.
love that.
There's definitely a healthy balance.
Indeed.
So this has been amazing. What's one truth you now live by that you wish everyone knew?
One truth that I wish everybody knew is that challenges that are in your life are not existing to bring you down. They exist to lift you up. I used to have a negative context when it came to challenges in my life, especially because my life has been challenging. And so I'm now at a place where I really understand and have come to accept that life comes with challenges, especially when you're living a big life like me. Seriously, like I'm not saying that again to brag or nothing, but like I have a full plate. And so I have to accept that there's going to be challenges. because of the choices I've made and what my mission and purpose is and what I want to accomplish. There's going to be challenges, and
Yeah.
those challenges are not bad. Everything is for my benefit. For real. Like I'm really at that place now where I finally like got it. Like, oh, this challenge is here to teach me something, or for me to, or prepare me to the next level. There's some data, and it might be like literally information. Like, yo, I dropped the ball on this, or I need to be more organized with my schedule. Right? It could be as simple as that, or also experiencing some type of emotional response or reaction to something like, oh, okay, wow,
Mm-hmm.
I realized I was triggered by that.
Mm-hmm.
What's that about? And then now doing the self exploration. Remember in the beginning, I was talking about self discovery and whatnot. The self exploration of why was I triggered? What was it about that? So, that exploration, there's data in that too. So I just
Right.
feel like, man, I want everybody to know, man, you're going to go through things in life, and that's okay. It's all part of the process. It's all a part of the journey. Just take the data and do something with it.
Mm, that's good. That's good.
Thank
So
you.
if someone was on the edge of giving up, what would you say to them right now? Would it be the same
Love that
thing?
question. No, it wouldn't be the same question. It wouldn't be the same thing. I would first, it depends, it depends on what are they giving up on. And it also depends on, because some things are, I gave up on selling drugs, right? So it depends on what they're giving up on and also why they're giving up. Um, and then I would also have a conversation with them about, are you going to regret this? And I know they say don't live life with regrets, but I've given up on some things that I regret, that I didn't even allow to give a chance to flourish, but it got too tough. And so what I learned is don't stop, slow down, but never stop. So to answer your question, I would really be in the inquiry, because I don't want to assume. I think it's arrogant to assume that I have an answer for somebody. So I would ask more questions, and not questions for me to answer, but more questions for them to answer about whatever it is that they're giving up on. Yeah.
That's good. Thank you for your truthful response, True.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm honored.
This has been amazing. How can our listeners find you? You said you have a book. Where can we find your book?
Yeah,
Your coaching programs? What do you have going
yeah.
on? Let us know.
I appreciate that. So on Instagram, you can find me at True Speaks Power. That's TRUE Speaks Power. You can DM me. You can also order the book directly from me. I'll sign it for you. You can also go to Amazon and look for The Power of Choice by True Kephra, TrueKhepra. I also have a podcast. It's called Raw Success, RAW Success. I also have an Instagram for that podcast, Raw Success. So those are the ways that they can find my book and have access to me, and even inquire, be in inquiry about my coaching programs, and, just hit me up. Let's have a conversation. Let's talk. I would love to, even say peace.
Awesome. Thank you so much, True. This has truly been an honor. You have given us
Yeah.
great wisdom and information, and hopefully you'll be back on again.
Listen, man, I'm upset it's ending so soon, and I want to say I'm grateful for this opportunity. And whatever came out of me is actually a reflection out of you, because you were my co-pilot. So thank you for this opportunity. It's been an honor, and I'm looking forward to us, connecting and making more moves together. Maybe one day you'll be on my show.
Yeah, maybe one day.
Let's get it.
Thank you so much. I'll be sure to share the links on the description,
Okay,
and I'll edit in your information as well for everyone to
indeed.
know. Okay.
Let's get it. Peace. Stay
All
strong.
right. Take care.
Yeah.